Spending hours browsing through fonts shouldn't be a normal way to spend your time.
Hello! Welcome to my channel. This is Sky Blue Jenny, where we talk about typography and graphic design, and today I'm going to show you how to save a lot of time trying to find the right font using the character panel in Adobe products like InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop. And if you don't have Adobe, no worries. You can apply many of these filters for other sites when you're looking for fonts. So let's just jump right in. We're going to start in InDesign first. So to make sure that you have the character panel, make sure you're either viewing it or you need to navigate to Window, type in Tables, and then clicking on Character. And there's also a shortcut, Command-T, to make it visible. And if you already have it visible, make sure you see it. Normally it's a check mark, and select it and you don't see it, try it again and there should be a check mark. It should be visible that way. As we go closer into the character panel in InDesign, you're going to have several things on the window. It's going to be a typeface list. This is normally where you would cycle through all the different kinds of fonts that are on your computer. You also have the font. So more specific than the typeface list, this is actually listing the font. And a lot of people like to say font when they really mean typeface. But typeface is actually the family. Garamond, Bodoni. Font would be something more specific like bold or Roman or light. Font is kind of a subset of a typeface, and that's a more specific thing that people are looking for. Generally, when you say font, a lot of people know what you're talking about. That's just the difference between the two. You're also going to see in the character panel font size, leading, kerning, tracking. If these are all new words to you, don't worry. Don't need to really worry about those things, especially the further down we go, the more complex the transformation to the characters are going to be. So just focus on typeface list, the fonts, as well as the font size, and maybe the leading if you want the spacing a little bit differently. So today we're just going to be focusing on the typeface list. Once you click on it, you're going to see the list of typefaces that are downloaded onto your computer, things that are living there right now. You're going to see things like filters, and this is where the most useful part of the character panel is, at least for me. By clicking on filters, first icon, you're gonna see things to help narrow down your selection like classification and properties. So for classifications, these things include sans serif, serif, slab serifs, scripts, black letter, monospace, handwritten, or decorative. And I go over what's the difference between a sans serif and a serif mean in my previous video, so check it out if these are all very foreign words, and hopefully that video will help you. Those are some of the classifications that Adobe uses to break down the fonts. Say you already have your classification down, you already have a serif in mind. Maybe you want to narrow it down even further. That's when properties come in. Some things that are in the properties include weight. So that's like how bold it is, how light it is, how dense the letters themselves are. Width is how narrow or condensed or how wide they are. X height is going to be how tall the main part of the lowercase letters are going to be. Now, a little rule of thumb, X height, the higher the X height in proportion to the other characters, those are going to be friendlier, and the lower the X height are going to be a little bit more traditional or more professional. So if you want to go friendly, go with a taller X height. If you want to be more professional and more traditional, go with a lower X height. Something like contrast is really helpful for helping distinguish something like a fashion brand. At least in the past, they tend to use a high contrast. So you can vary up how much contrast there is in strokes, and normally with things like a script, they're very beautiful when they have a lot of contrast. But if you're thinking about things like legibility or things that need to be viewed on a small size, try to avoid using high contrast because sometimes those details tend to get a little bit more difficult to read at a smaller size. So those are just a couple properties, a couple of tips on how to navigate and filter down those properties within the fonts. There's also things like uppercase and lowercase construction, and those are primarily if you're just looking for, I just want all capitals and just that's cool. I just want to shout my message at somebody. Or if you want to do lowercase construction, and those are just all lowercase letters, and those are also down there. There's also things like lining figures or old style figures. Lining figures are actually used as numbers when you're trying to have the numbers align themselves to the baseline. This is very useful for things like infographics, charts, gigantic numbers for display display or any sorts of numbers that tend to follow the same baseline, those are the ones that we're often look for. For old style figures, that's why they're called old style. Those numerals were always included in a book in the paragraph. They adjusted the numbers to go up and down depending on the weight of the characters. In theory, it would help with legibility, and that's where old style figures were mainly from. So most of the time, we don't really need those. Don't pay attention to them. If it's too complicated, go lining figures. You don't even need to select this if it's too complicated, but those are what those properties are for. If you're selecting a bunch of different properties in combination together, you're going to be filtering and narrowing down with every single property you have selected. If you only want to be searching for them separately, make sure you have none of those properties selected, or you clear all of them and then just having selected one new property. Otherwise, you're going to do a combination of those. Unless that's what you really want to do, then feel free to make any combination of the properties that you want. Other than that, make sure you clear all those properties out so you can have all of the properties available to you. As you're cycling through all of the different fonts, you're shopping around, you're like, ooh, this is a really cool one. You can click next to it on the star to the right of the typeface to indicate this one as your favorite. And this would be super helpful if you are working on the same brand guidelines for multiple projects and would like to maintain consistency. Click that star button and favorite that one and save it for later. This is also really useful if you're developing your own style by using similar fonts. Several of my students really stuck with Futura one term. You'd want to save Futura for the future so you don't have to constantly be searching for it or navigating to it. Another thing to remember, as you're cycling through, you're going to see this little wavy equal sign. And clicking on this will display fonts that Adobe recommends are similar in characteristics to the one you've chosen. It doesn't even matter if you even know how to describe the typeface. You can just click on this and Adobe will tell you what typefaces look like yours. Maybe you found a typeface that's similar to the one you had in your head, but maybe it's just not quite there and you can't really understand why it's not the one. You can just click on that wavy equal sign and hopefully the similar feature there would be really useful for you. We're gonna move on to the next one. You have the icon, the recently added. Just see the ones that you just downloaded. Maybe you were searching through there instead, or you downloaded some new ones. You just click on that to kind of filter to your most recently added fonts. And the one next to that are activated fonts. Great thing about Adobe and Creative Cloud, you have access to a very wide range of typefaces with Adobe Fonts and Creative Cloud in 2020. Woo! If you don't have anything listed by clicking on the cloud filter, you can navigate to the top of the character panel. You can navigate to top after you've clicked the typeface list, the font list. Right next to fonts, you're going to click on Find More. And this gives you access to all the fonts that are currently on Adobe Fonts. And this is where you can sync the fonts from Adobe Fonts directly into whatever program you're in using Adobe Creative Cloud. And as an Adobe user, you are already licensed to use these fonts. In Adobe's licensing agreement, they have a standard font licensing agreement, or EULA, and this allows for both personal and commercial use, sales, and distribution of designs and documents which are created using the font software. So whatever fonts you're using in Adobe products, you have license to use Adobe Fonts. And this may include printed materials, logos, rendered content like photographs, film, video, and bitmap graphics. If it's distributed, the design should not contain the original font, so you can convert it to a vector, outline, rasterize, or image, something that doesn't include the font itself, and that would be usable. You have access to thousands upon maybe just 100. I think it's pretty much thousands of fonts. You have access to thousands of fonts on Adobe Fonts. Use your tools, especially if you have Adobe and Creative Cloud. In 2020, this is a very useful feature and you don't have to be going to many websites just to get something that will help you achieve your project and what your goals are. Preview text is right next to Adobe Fonts, and this is where you're going to display any string of text to display next to the fonts while you're shopping through. If you have selected text, whatever you have selected in your text box will preview in the panel next to all the different fonts while you're shopping around. And this is really useful when you're handling a lot of different typefaces and you kind of just want to see exactly what it is. A really quick way of just like filtering through. Another thing that you can use for preview text is the Quick Brown Fox pangram, or a phrase that includes every letter of the alphabet. So say you want to have a really quick read of the whole typeface and what it looks like. This phrase is designed, you can see every single letter at a glance, as quick as possible in context in a really short sentence. There's also the full uppercase construction of the alphabet, so if you want to see all the uppercase letters, as well as the numbers and symbols. And for some reason, a phrase about Roger and his 236 peaches. I don't know why that phrase is there. I've never seen it before. I actually just saw that today while I was working on this. If for some reason you want to preview the text with Roger and his 236 peaches, you've got it. So that's basically it. Hopefully you're selecting typefaces in InDesign and you're kind of narrowing everything down. This is one of the best ways to filter through the character panel. Narrow down the fonts as fast as possible, especially if you know what you're looking for. If you're not sure what you're looking for, maybe you're looking for, or if you want something Western, then you can go decorative. Or if you do a lot of research, try to connect those connections with what you're looking for in a font. By looking at other references and seeing what you like about them and how you would want to apply them in your project, you're able to kind of distinguish what fonts you need, what would be great for your project, which would convey the best message, and what would be useful and applicable for your work. Greatest thing about Adobe is these character panels is almost exactly the same in Adobe Illustrator. If you go to Adobe Illustrator, to show the character panel, you need to navigate to the window menu and then to type and then character, and then you're going to see everything is about the same. By clicking on the font family drop down, you're gonna find everything exactly the same. You're gonna have filters, you're gonna have favorites, you're gonna have recent uploads, you're gonna have Adobe fonts, find more, preview text, all of that good stuff. Everything that you just talked about in InDesign, that is in Adobe Illustrator available for you. So Creative Cloud users, hooray, you don't have to learn multiple things about fonts. The character panel in Photoshop is slightly different than how it is displayed in InDesign and in Adobe Illustrator. In order to display the character panel in Photoshop, you're going to navigate to the window menu and then scroll down just a little bit to character, and that should display your character panel. Here you'll be able to filter through the classifications. Here they're called classes, and they're called serif, slab serif, sans serif, etc. This will also display Adobe fonts that are downloaded to your computer and filtering your favorite fonts, or the fonts that are indicated with the star in other Adobe programs using the cloud. And normally this works, but for some reason when I tried to click through and display my favorite fonts, it didn't show anything up. So maybe I have an older version installed or something's wrong with my syncing, but normally this should display your favorite fonts, and then it also displays similar fonts. So you're able to explore fonts that you have selected, things that might look very similar to the one you already have selected. And in Photoshop, there is also on the side more from Adobe Fonts. Click on the Creative Cloud icon on the far right. It will bring you directly to the Adobe Fonts website. So this will take you to the page on your browser where it has more detailed descriptions on narrowing fonts. And this is something that they've updated recently. These are very interesting styles that you can use to help filter out fonts, especially when you're looking for things like Art Deco or something Western. So it's a little bit more specific and a little bit more descriptive. Maybe it's a little bit easier, maybe it's not as helpful, but those are available directly on the Adobe Fonts website. If you scroll down a little bit more on the left-hand side, you're going to see the classifications and properties exactly the same as how it's displayed in both Adobe InDesign and in Illustrator, where you can filter as many fonts as you want. So hopefully that is Photoshop, and you can navigate to the Adobe Fonts website directly and filter through all of these. Select your favorites and they should sync to your InDesign and your Illustrator through the Creative Cloud. So that was the character panel in Adobe InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop. Did I miss anything? If I missed anything, drop a comment below. Let me know what I missed. And if you happen to get value from this video, drop a like below. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time and your attention and all your hard work that you're going to be doing using that filter tool in the character panel. If you are subscribed, I will see you again next week where I will be sharing more typography tips and tricks. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care, and I'll see you again next week. Navigate to the window menu. Other ones. The other. You won't be finding. What is the other things? You have access. Or. Oh my. Sans serif. But I want to do this. And I'm wearing these glasses. Because I don't want to put on any makeup.